In every great war, history often remembers the generals, the armies, the movements of nations. But sometimes, a story rises from the ashes that begins not on a battlefield, but in an ordinary life. This is one such story. Today, you and I will walk alongside a young woman who never planned to become a symbol. A woman who only wanted to study books, build a quiet life, and understand the past. Yet fate demanded she become part of the future. Her name is Lyudmila Pavlichenko, a girl who refused to be underestimated. Picture a small Ukrainian town named Biela Tserkva in the year 1916. A cold wind blows across wooden houses. Inside one of them, a newborn cries strong, determined, as if already arguing with the world. That child will grow up to become the most feared female sniper in human history. But no one knew that then. By the time Lyudmila was 14, she was already stubborn, competitive, and fiercely proud. One afternoon, she overheard a group of boys bragging about their shooting skills. When she expressed interest, one boy smirked and said, "Girls don't shoot." It was not meant as an insult, just a lazy assumption. But that single sentence ignited a fire inside her. She walked straight to the local shooting club and demanded training. And when Lyudmila wanted something, she pursued it with relentless intensity. Within months, she outshot every boy who had laughed at her. Her coaches called her focused, cold-minded, born to aim. She simply called herself determined. Looking back years later, she would admit, "I never cared about proving anything to the world. I just hated losing." That hatred of losing would become her greatest weapon. A young historian with a secret talent. By 1937, the world had begun to tremble under the shadow of rising fascism. But for Lyudmila, life was filled with books. She was accepted into Kiev University, majoring in history, a dream she had pursued passionately. She wanted to become a scholar, maybe a researcher, perhaps a museum professional. Her classmates saw her as disciplined, quiet, even reserved. A young woman who spent more time with ancient texts than with parties or dances. But behind that calm exterior lived a fierce competitor who still visited shooting ranges on weekends, practicing in near silence, perfecting her breathing, her patience, her stillness. No one on campus imagined that the quiet girl in the corner of the library was capable of holding a rifle so steady that even seasoned soldiers would one day fear her. No one knew she could disappear into the landscape like a shadow. Not even her friends, not yet. The 22nd of June 1941, the world collapses. Then came the morning that changed everything. The 22nd of June 1941. The sky over the Soviet Union roared with the sound of German aircraft. The invasion Operation Barbarossa had begun. Cities burned. People fled. Millions feared what was coming. Lyudmila was 24 years old. She stood among crowds reading posters urging citizens to join the military. She didn't hesitate. She didn't wait for anyone to encourage her. She marched straight to the recruitment office and said, "I want to join the infantry. I want to fight." The officers looked at her skeptically. A young woman, educated, polite, small in frame. They suggested she become a nurse. But Lyudmila shook her head firmly. "No, I came to fight. I am a sniper." When they still doubted her, she placed her shooting certificates on the table. Her awards, her scores, her training records. The room changed. They handed her a rifle. Baptism by fire Odessa. Lyudmila's first deployment was the defense of Odessa, a port city under brutal attack by German and Romanian forces. The sun was merciless, the air thick with gunpowder, and the front line chaotic and terrifying for any newcomer. But Lyudmila was not like most newcomers. On her very first day in battle, she spotted a German soldier crawling toward a Soviet machine gun nest. She lay flat, inhaled slowly, and steadied her aim. Her finger tightened. The rifle cracked. The enemy fell. Her first confirmed kill. Many years later, she recalled. I felt no triumph, no fear, only the understanding that I had crossed a line. I had become a soldier. That day, something inside her shifted forever. Growing reputation, the girl sniper. At first, her male comrades viewed her with mild curiosity. A woman, a sniper, unusual, unexpected. But as days passed, admiration replaced curiosity. She didn't miss, she didn't freeze, and she never complained, not about hunger, cold, weight of gear, or exhaustion. She simply worked. Her commanders soon realized she had the rare qualities every sniper needed: iron discipline, absolute patience, an instinct for concealment, an incredible ability to stay calm under fire. Word spread fast across the trenches. The men began to call her Lyudmila the Hawk. Sharp-eyed, silent, deadly. The Germans would eventually come up with another name. A name that would echo across history. But that comes later. The art of silence, becoming a true sniper. Odessa was where Lyudmila began to perfect her craft. She practiced lying motionless for hours, letting insects crawl over her skin, letting tall grass hide her through entire afternoons. She trained herself to blend into trees, rubble, snow, and dust. But most importantly, she mastered time. As she later said, a sniper's greatest weapon is not the rifle. It is patience. There were missions where she waited 12 hours for a single target. There were days she crawled inch by inch across mud, so thick it smelled of iron. There were nights where she held a position until her limbs went numb. But for Lyudmila, the hardship was simply part of the job. And the job was vital. Her presence on the battlefield saved countless Soviet soldiers. She eliminated machine gunners, officers, and scouts. She disrupted enemy advances with a single shot. And she grew cold to the danger around her. Day after day, she became less like a student of history, and more like a ghost haunting the front lines. A legend begins to form. Within her first 75 days of combat, Lyudmila recorded 187 confirmed kills, a number so extraordinary that commanders double-checked the reports. There was no error. The young woman from Kiev was extraordinary. German soldiers started whispering about a sniper they couldn't locate. They noticed that every time one of their officers raised binoculars, he fell. Every time someone tried to cross a trench, he never reached the other side. Rumors traveled quickly. The Germans began calling her Die Rotjägerin, the Red Huntress. Others used an even darker term, the Lady in the Shadows. But Lyudmila was not hunting for glory. She was protecting her comrades, protecting her homeland, and protecting a fragile world that war was trying to destroy. The responsibility of a sniper. By late 1941, Lyudmila was no longer just a soldier. She was a symbol, though she never asked to be one. Her commanders placed her in charge of training new snipers. She taught them everything she knew: how to slow their breathing, how to wait, how to shoot between heartbeats, how to remain absolutely invisible. Some of her trainees later said, "She didn't teach us to kill. She taught us to survive." War changes people. It had already changed her. But somewhere inside, she remained the same determined girl who once refused to accept that she couldn't shoot. War simply sharpened what was already there. The unbreakable resolve. And then, winter arrived. Snow coated the battlefield in a harsh white sheet. Cold winds carved through uniforms. Rifles froze. Food became scarce. But Lyudmila did not bend under the cold. She embraced it. White camouflaged cloaks made her nearly invisible. The silence of winter became her ally. The frost steadied her hands. Her kill count rose dramatically. And so did German fear. They circulated internal messages. Beware the woman sniper. She is extremely dangerous. But no one could find her. Because she was never where they expected. Never predictable. Never careless. She was a shadow, born from snow and patience. The road to Sevastopol. After the fall of Odessa, Soviet forces retreated to the fortress city of Sevastopol, deep in Crimea. Lyudmila went with them. This would become the most defining chapter of her life. Her comrades recall seeing her walking into Sevastopol, still carrying her rifle, still calm, still focused. A veteran at 25. A leader, a legend in the making. By that time, she had surpassed 200 confirmed kills, but Sevastopol would push her even further than she had ever imagined. It was here, on rocky cliffs, overlooking the Black Sea, that she would become a symbol of resistance for an entire nation. It was here that her legend would grow so fearsome that German loudspeakers would one day shout her name into the trenches, begging her to surrender. But that is a story for the next part. War is loud. Explosions shake the earth. Engines roar. Soldiers shout commands into smoke-filled air. But the world of a sniper is the opposite. It is a world built on silence, patience, and shadows. A world where just one breath, one blink, one tiny shift in a blade of grass can decide who lives and who dies. For most soldiers, war is chaos. But for Lyudmila Pavlichenko, it was a deadly game of stillness, a quiet arena where only the calmest mind could survive. And she had one of the calmest minds on the entire Eastern Front. Sevastopol, the fortress of stone and blood. By late 1941, Lyudmila had been stationed in Sevastopol, a powerful stronghold built on cliffs above the Black Sea. This city was a fortress of tunnels, bunkers, ancient ruins, and steep hills, perfect terrain for a sniper, and also a graveyard for anyone careless. The winters in Sevastopol were brutal. Wind from the sea cut through even the thickest uniforms. Fog slithered across rocky ridges, hiding enemies and illusions alike. The sound of artillery echoed day and night, so constant that it became part of the landscape like a heartbeat of destruction. For months, Sevastopol endured attacks from all sides. German dive bombers screamed overhead. Shells rained down on trenches. The earth shook so violently that some soldiers slept sitting up, afraid the next tremor might be their last. Yet through all of this, Lyudmila moved with purpose. Her rifle became an extension of her body. Her eyes, sharpened by hours of scanning the landscape, caught the smallest movements: a helmet glinting in the sun, the edge of a sleeve, the tilt of binoculars. And every time she pulled the trigger, another life ended. Her kill count climbed, and so did German fear. Master of disguise, becoming one with the earth. By now, Lyudmila had refined every aspect of her craft. To survive, the German countersnipers, who were among the best in the world, she had to become invisible. And she did. She learned to crawl across terrain without disturbing a single leaf. She memorized the way shadows shifted throughout the day. She studied wind, humidity, temperature, and even the smell of the air. Lyudmila didn't just hide behind cover. She adapted her body to the landscape. In grasslands, she lay flat, letting insects crawl across her skin. In the mountains, she pressed her body against stone so closely that she could feel the cold seep into her bones. In snow, she built tiny nests and covered herself in white sheets, becoming a ghostly shape indistinguishable from drifts. Her discipline was terrifying. She could remain motionless for hours, unmoving, unblinking, unbothered by hunger, thirst, or pain. Her comrades joked, "Luda doesn't breathe like a human. She breathes like a sniper." The dual sniper versus sniper. On the battlefield, the most dangerous enemy of a sniper is another sniper. They were hunters of hunters, silent executioners, who killed without warning, without sound, and without mercy. Lyudmila survived dozens of sniper duels. But one duel, in particular, became legendary. It lasted 3 days. Day 1. The Stare in the Dark. The Germans had deployed an elite sniper to eliminate her. A man who had dozens of confirmed kills of his own. A man who studied her tactics, her patterns, her favorite firing positions. He knew she existed. He knew she was near. But he didn't know where. On the first morning, Lyudmila spotted movement. A brief shimmer of sunlight hitting glass. She froze. She knew what it meant. A scope reflection. A sniper like her. But she did not fire. Not yet. She whispered to herself. He's testing me. The first day passed in total silence, each of them waiting for the other to make a mistake. Day 2. The Game of Patience. On the second morning, the German sniper fired a single shot into a rock face near her position. A warning. A provocation. Lyudmila did not respond. She simply exhaled slowly and pressed her body deeper into the earth. Every muscle ached from the previous day. Her fingers felt numb. Her lips cracked in the cold. Yet she remained still. Hours passed. Light shifted across the battlefield. Shadows stretched and retreated. But she waited. War had taught her one truth. Patience kills. Day 3. The final move. The third day dawned with a pale sun breaking through a thin layer of fog. Lyudmila sensed the end approaching. Her opponent was good, but she was better. Then she saw it. A faint glimmer. Barely noticeable. A tiny flash of light bouncing off metal. The German's firing position revealed for just a fraction of a second. She inhaled, held her breath, aligned her scope. For a moment, time stopped. Then, she squeezed the trigger. Her shot cut through the quiet air, single, precise, absolute. The duel was over. Later, she would simply say, "It was him or me." But every soldier in her unit knew. They had witnessed mastery, saving her comrades. Lyudmila's legend grew not only because of her kills, but because of her courage. She didn't just perform her duties. She went beyond them. One bitter morning, a Soviet unit became pinned down by German assault troops. Machine guns pinned the Soviets to the ground. Dozens faced certain death. Lyudmila crawled toward a ridge, ignoring bullets striking the rocks around her. She positioned herself, breathed steadily, and fired. One shot, one German gunner down. Another shot. Another enemy fell. A third, another. Within seconds, she had broken the assault line. The Soviet soldiers escaped and regrouped because of her intervention. They later said, "She wasn't just a sniper. She was a guardian." Fear spreads among German ranks. As the months passed, German troops began circulating reports. "A deadly woman sniper is targeting our officers. Be careful. She hits everything she aims at. She appears and disappears like a ghost." The German command eventually learned her name, and then something unusual happened. They used loudspeakers to call out to her. Yes, loudspeakers. The voice would echo across no man's land. "Pavlichenko, come to our side. We will give you chocolate and the rank of officer." When she didn't reply, they changed tactics. "Pavlichenko, we know you are there. We will capture you sooner or later." Her comrades waited anxiously for her reaction. Lyudmila laughed. She reportedly joked, "If they're shouting my name, it means they still haven't found me." Her humor, like her aim, was sharp. The kill count that shocked the world. As winter deepened and battles raged across Sevastopol, Lyudmila's kill count grew. 200, 250, 280. Then one day, after eliminating a German sniper and 2 scouts in a single afternoon, she crossed a number few in history have ever reached: 300 confirmed kills. Eventually, the official tally became 309 confirmed kills, including 36 German snipers, numerous officers, saboteurs, machine gun teams, scouts, and elite soldiers trained specifically to eliminate her. Most soldiers fight in a lifetime without reaching a fraction of that number. Lyudmila did it before her 26th birthday. The unspoken toll. But behind every number, there is a story. And behind every kill, there is a cost. War leaves scars you cannot see. Lyudmila lost many of her closest friends. She held dying comrades in her arms, their blood staining her uniform. She slept beside bodies because shelters were overcrowded. She listened to last words spoken with trembling breaths. Her eyes grew older than her age, her heart heavier with every passing day. War had shaped her into something steel-like, but steel, too, can carry fractures deep inside. There were moments, rare moments, when someone might catch her staring at the horizon, her rifle beside her, her shoulders trembling slightly. But when asked if she was afraid, she always said, "I am not fighting alone." The injury that changed everything. In June 1942, the final battle for Sevastopol intensified. German artillery unleashed one of the most ferocious bombardments of the entire Eastern Front. Buildings shattered, cliffs split open, smoke swallowed the sky. During one bombardment, a shell exploded near Lyudmila's position. A metal fragment tore into her face, ripping across her brow. Blood streamed down her cheek. Her vision blurred. For the first time in the war, she felt herself slipping away. Her comrades rushed to pull her from the rubble, shouting her name, pressing cloth to her wound. She fought to stay awake. She fought to stay alive. But the world grew dark. Lyudmila had survived enemy snipers, machine gun barrages, winter nights, starvation, and ambushes. But this wound forced the Soviet command to make a difficult decision. She was too valuable, too symbolic, too legendary to lose. They evacuated her from Sevastopol. She would not return to the front line again. And when she woke up in a field medical tent, realizing she was being pulled away from her comrades, Lyudmila wept, not from pain, but from the feeling she had abandoned those she wanted to protect. A new purpose. In the months that followed, Sevastopol fell. But Lyudmila lived wounded, scarred, forever changed. Her commanders approached her with a new mission. She was to become a voice, a representative, a symbol of resistance. She would speak for the soldiers who could no longer speak for themselves. At first, she resisted. She wanted to return. She wanted to fight. But her injuries prevented it. And her kill count had already turned her into something far larger than a single sniper. She was now a hero, whether she wanted to be one or not. The legend spreads beyond the battlefield. News of her achievements spread throughout the Soviet Union and across the world. The image of a young woman who had taken down more than 300 enemy soldiers stunned foreign journalists. Women looked to her as a symbol of strength. Men admired her discipline and skill. Politicians saw her as a powerful morale booster. But Lyudmila didn't seek fame. Her diary from the time simply reads, "I did what I needed to do. Many others did the same, but they are gone. Remember them." Those words capture who she truly was. Not a killer, not a celebrity, but a soldier with a purpose. The war had taken her youth, her friends, her softness. But it also forged her into something unbreakable. The next chapter of her life would not involve rifles or snowy fields, but microphones, political leaders, cheering crowds, and a journey across the world. A journey that would turn Lyudmila Pavlichenko from a sniper into a global icon. War does not simply take lives. It reshapes the living. It molds them in silence, carving lines of grief across their hearts. Lines the world never sees. Lyudmila Pavlichenko was feared by her enemies, admired by her comrades, and celebrated by her commanders. But beneath the medals, beneath the calm expression she wore like armor, something deeper was happening inside her. Something the war demanded, piece by piece. This is the part of her story the gunfire never captured. The invisible wounds, even before the injury that forced her off the battlefield. Lyudmila had already suffered wounds invisible to the naked eye. She had watched comrades die, friends she joked with, trained with, shared canned food with, gone in an instant, swallowed by smoke and fire. Some died screaming. Some died silently. Some died in her arms. The battlefield does not ask permission before taking those you love. And for Lyudmila, every loss cut a little deeper. But she never allowed herself to fall apart. Instead, she channeled her grief into focus, into discipline, into the cold stillness required of a sniper. Her comrades later said, "Luda didn't cry. She didn't shout. But every time she came back from a mission, her eyes were a little heavier. She carried their memories with her, the way others carried ammunition. The bond of war brothers and sisters in arms. War isolates, but it also creates bonds stronger than blood. Those who fought beside Lyudmila, men and women alike, trusted her with their lives. To them, she wasn't just the girl sniper or the lady death. She was Luda, sharp-tongued, clever, and fiercely protective. They shared stories in trenches during long nights, whispered jokes to distract from hunger, passed around bread so hard it could break teeth, and found comfort in each other's presence. Some nights, huddled around a small stove, they would talk about life after the war, a future filled with peace, music, and warm homes. Lyudmila listened quietly, sometimes smiling, but inside, she wondered if she even had a future outside the battlefield. For her, life before the war felt like a distant dream. Books and libraries seemed almost unreal, shadows of another lifetime. War had become her world, her identity, her purpose. Masha, the friend she couldn't save. Lyudmila had a close friend on the front, a fellow female sniper named Masha. Masha was everything Lyudmila was not. Bubbly, talkative, romantic. She teased Lyudmila constantly, telling her to smile more, to think about life beyond the rifle. To Lyudmila, Masha was the last reminder that humanity still existed inside the chaos. But one morning, during an assault near Sevastopol, a shell landed near their position. Lyudmila dug herself from the dirt, ears ringing. She turned and saw Masha lying motionless, blood pouring from her chest. Lyudmila crawled to her, hands shaking for the first time in months. She lifted Masha's head, whispering her name, telling her to hold on. Masha's eyes fluttered open. She tried to speak, but blood filled her mouth instead of words. Lyudmila held her until her breathing stopped. She held her long after the medics declared her gone. That day, Lyudmila didn't return to camp until evening, and her uniform was still stained with Masha's blood. Her commander said nothing when he saw her. He simply placed a hand on her shoulder. He understood. That night, Lyudmila made herself a silent promise. If she could not save her friends' lives, she would make their deaths mean something. Her kill count rose dramatically in the weeks that followed. A love found and lost. Few know this part of her life. But during the war, Lyudmila experienced a brief, fragile love, one that bloomed in the cracks between explosions. The man's name has been lost in many historical records. But he was an experienced sniper and an instructor. He recognized Lyudmila's talent immediately. He helped refine her technique, shared advanced knowledge, and taught her tricks of camouflage and awareness that no manual described. They often talked during breaks about life, fear, ambition, and what might happen when the war ended. In the bleakest moments, their connection offered warmth, a rare sense of humanity inside a world of death. But war does not nurture love for long. During a German attack, he was struck by shrapnel. Lyudmila sprinted across open ground, ignoring the bullets, the danger, just to reach him. She found him still alive. Barely. Blood soaked his uniform. His eyes were fading. He whispered, "You're stronger than you think. Live. Finish what we started." Then he slipped away. Lyudmila stayed beside him until medics forced her to leave. The grief carved another scar inside her, one the world would never see. The Siege of Sevastopol. The turning point. The battle for Sevastopol became one of the most intense chapters of Lyudmila's life. The Germans wanted the city at any cost. The Soviets defended it with desperate ferocity. Lyudmila spent days crawling through rubble, hunting enemy snipers, eliminating advancing infantry. Her position was often exposed. Her mission was always dangerous. But she never hesitated. Each time she pulled the trigger, she remembered those she lost. Masha, her lover, the dozens of comrades who fell beside her. Sevastopol was both her hell and her proving ground. It pushed her beyond her physical and emotional limits. And yet, she endured. The fragment of steel. Then came the day that ended her combat career. A massive artillery strike shook the entire sector. Buildings collapsed like sandcastles. Stones rained down from cliffs. Lyudmila was caught in the blast. She felt a searing pain tear across her face. A piece of shrapnel embedding just above her eye. Her world spun. Blood blurred her vision. Her knees buckled. She tried to stand. Tried to continue fighting. Tried to raise her rifle. But her body finally refused. Her comrades dragged her away, shouting her name over the roaring artillery. She fought them, insisting she could still fight, but her legs no longer obeyed. She lost consciousness before they reached the medical tent. When she woke, her world had changed forever. The decision she never wanted. The doctors told her the truth. She could recover. She could heal. But she could never return to frontline combat. They feared another wound would kill her instantly. They feared losing her would damage national morale. They feared her legend would die prematurely. Her commanders decided, without asking her, that Lyudmila Pavlichenko would be removed from combat indefinitely. To her, this was worse than any wound. She begged to return. She insisted she was fine. She argued with officers who outranked her by decades. Her pleas changed nothing. Her role as a sniper had ended. The weight of survival. As she lay recovering in a hospital, Lyudmila faced a new kind of enemy. Guilt. Why had she survived when so many had not? Why was she spared, while Masha and others lay in unmarked graves? Why did fate choose her to live, when all she wanted was to fight alongside her comrades? War forces soldiers to ask questions without answers. Her diary from this time contains only one line repeated several times. I must be useful. A new mission, the political battlefield. Her commanders finally presented her with a new task, one she never expected. The Soviet Union wanted her to represent the female soldiers of the Eastern Front. They wanted her to speak, to tell the world what had happened, to rally support from foreign nations. At first, she resisted. She was a soldier, not a speaker. Her voice belonged in the wind of the battlefield, not on a stage. But when she learned that her story could help open a second front, a front that might save thousands of lives, she agreed. Not for fame, not for recognition, but for duty. She left the hospital wearing a uniform, decorated with medals, but carrying invisible wounds heavier than any gear she had ever worn. The journey begins. Escorted by diplomats and officers, Lyudmila traveled to Moscow, a city that looked almost alien compared to the front lines. There were lights, music, civilian laughter, shops, life. It felt surreal. She was meeting journalists, foreign envoys, government officials. People wanted her autograph, photographs, interviews. Some stared in disbelief. A woman? A sniper? 300 kills? She became a sensation, a symbol, a living legend. But inside, she still felt like the young history student from Kiev, the girl who once sat quietly in libraries, dreaming of writing papers, not fighting wars. And now she was being sent far from the battlefield. across oceans and continents, to speak for soldiers still risking their lives. The world was about to meet Lyudmila Pavlichenko, not the sniper, not the soldier, but the woman behind the rifle. A woman shaped by loss, courage, and unbroken resolve. War had taken nearly everything from Lyudmila Pavlichenko: her youth, her friends, her innocence, the life she once dreamed of. But fate was not finished with her yet. Though the battlefield had shaped her, the world beyond it was about to transform her into something greater than she could ever imagine. This is the final part of her journey. The journey of a soldier who became a voice, a symbol, a legend. Across the ocean, a new kind of battle. In 1942, the Soviet Union sent Lyudmila on a mission unlike any she had faced before. No rifle, no camouflage, no trenches or ruins. This time, she would confront the world with her words. Her destination, the United States of America and Canada. Her objective, convince the Allies to open a second front against Nazi Germany. The young woman who once hid among snowdrifts and shadows now stepped into a world of microphones, reporters, and political expectations. And she was terrified, not of bullets, but of speaking in front of crowds. Still, she knew what was at stake. Soviet soldiers were dying by the thousands every day. Cities were burning. Families were being destroyed. If her story could awaken the world, she would tell it, no matter the cost. Washington, D.C. An unexpected meeting. When Lyudmila arrived in Washington, D.C., she was barely 25 years old. Her uniform was simple, her expression calm. A thin scar traced across her eyebrow, a silent reminder of the price she had paid. The city overwhelmed her at first. Tall buildings, cars gliding smoothly along clean streets, men in polished shoes, women in elegant dresses, shops glittering with lights. It felt impossibly distant from Sevastopol's rubble and smoke. Then came the meeting that few Soviet soldiers could ever dream of. President Franklin D. Roosevelt welcomed her personally at the White House. He studied her closely, impressed by her composure. Beside him stood Eleanor Roosevelt, whose kind yet firm demeanor made an immediate impact on Lyudmila. Eleanor would later write, "She carried herself with a dignity that transcended her age. Her eyes, so young, had already seen too much." Lyudmila spoke softly, choosing her words carefully. She was not accustomed to diplomatic language, but her sincerity made every sentence feel heavy with truth. The Roosevelts listened. They understood. This was no ordinary soldier. This was a warrior molded by fire. A speech that shook America. Her first major public speech took place in Chicago, in front of 15,000 people. She walked onto the stage with nervous steps, her uniform hanging slightly loose on her recovering body. The crowd was loud, curious, unsure of what this young Soviet woman could possibly say. Lyudmila approached the podium. She gripped the sides to steady her trembling hands. And then she spoke. Her voice was firm, clear, and powerful. "Gentlemen, I am 25 years old, and I have killed 309 German soldiers." Silence fell. A heavy, electric silence. She continued, "Do you not think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" Gasps. Shock. Then, thunderous applause. Journalists scribbled furiously. Newspapers across America and Canada printed her words the next morning. Radio hosts repeated them. Crowds gathered to see her. Women admired her strength. Men were stunned by her courage. Lyudmila Pavlichenko had just done what diplomats failed to do for months: capture American attention. She became a sensation overnight. A symbol of resistance. A reminder that war was not just numbers and maps, but human lives, human pain, and human bravery. Eleanor Roosevelt and a friendship forged in respect. During her stay, Lyudmila formed a close connection with First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, who became both mentor and friend. Eleanor admired her humanity as much as her bravery. She often invited Lyudmila to private conversations, asking about her dreams, her fears, her life before the war. For the first time in years, Lyudmila allowed herself to speak honestly about her grief, about the friend she lost, about the soldier she loved, about the weight of being a symbol. Eleanor listened. No judgment, no politics, just compassion. Decades later, Lyudmila and Eleanor Roosevelt would meet again, this time as old friends reunited. But in 1942, their friendship was a light in the darkness. Journey through Canada, the warrior on tour. After her success in America, Lyudmila traveled to Canada. Crowds greeted her with flowers. She attended fundraisers, rallies, and public events supporting the Allied cause. She met soldiers, veterans, families, and politicians. Everywhere she went, people were struck by the contrast. A young woman with a gentle voice, who carried the weight of hundreds of lives taken in battle. Canadians gave her gifts, rifles, medals, letters of admiration. One Canadian officer remarked, "It is unbelievable to stand beside someone who has shaped the war with her own hands." But Lyudmila never let the praise reach her ego. Whenever reporters asked how she felt about being famous, she simply answered, "I wish the world would remember the soldiers who died, not the ones who survived." Returning home, to a country still burning. When her tour ended, Lyudmila returned to the Soviet Union. But she returned to a homeland transformed by devastation. Cities reduced to ash. Fields turned into mass graves. Families torn apart. She would never again return to frontline combat. Her injuries and symbolic value made that impossible. Instead, the Soviet government assigned her to train new snipers. She approached this mission with the same discipline she had shown in battle. Her trainees respected her deeply. They hung onto every word she spoke, absorbing every technique, every lesson. Her students would eventually become some of the most effective snipers of the late war period. Her war was no longer fought with bullets, but with knowledge. After the war, a stranger to peace. When World War II ended in 1945, Europe celebrated with fireworks, parades, and tears of relief. But for Lyudmila, peace felt unfamiliar. The silence was uncomfortable. The lack of gunfire felt eerie. Crowds celebrating victory made her uneasy. Her dreams were filled with trenches, shadows, and the faces of the fallen. She was just 28 years old. Yet, she had lived a lifetime. The government offered her a comfortable life, but glamour and political attention never interested her. She returned to her studies, the love she had abandoned before the war. Lyudmila completed her degree in history and eventually worked as a researcher and curator at the Soviet Navy Museum. Visitors often noticed a quiet woman walking the halls, organizing documents, explaining exhibits, teaching students. Few realized she was once the most feared female sniper in the world. She rarely spoke about the war, not because she was ashamed, but because she knew people who bragged about battle could never understand it. A life of silence, a heart of steel. Even in her peaceful years, Lyudmila carried the war inside her. She struggled with nightmares, memories that returned uninvited, vivid and painful. She struggled with survivor's guilt, the constant question, why me? She struggled with loneliness, having lost so many who knew her best. Yet she never fell apart. She lived quietly, modestly, with the same discipline she had in battle. Though she received honors and national recognition, she preferred afternoons spent reading books, maintaining museum exhibits, and taking long walks alone. Her life had become a whisper. After years of thunder, a reunion across time. In 1957, during an international conference, Lyudmila reunited with Eleanor Roosevelt. The two women embraced like old friends. Eleanor wrote, She had aged, of course, but her eyes still carried that fierce intelligence, that strength shaped by war. They spoke for hours. About peace. About youth. About the damage war leaves behind. For Lyudmila, it was one of the rare moments she felt truly understood. The final years. And the immortal legacy. Lyudmila Pavlichenko passed away in 1974, at just 58 years old. Some say the war shortened her life. Others believe she carried too many wounds, physical and emotional, to grow old. But death did not end her story. Today, she is remembered as the most lethal female sniper in recorded history, a symbol of courage under impossible conditions, a warrior who fought not for glory, but for the people she loved, a woman who proved that strength has no gender. Her rifle rests in museums, her uniform preserved behind glass, her name etched into monuments. But her true legacy is far more personal. It lives in the women who challenge expectations, in the soldiers who find courage in impossible moments, in every person who chooses duty over fear. In the end, Lyudmila once said, "I did what I had to do, nothing more, nothing less." But history remembers differently. History remembers a young woman who walked into war carrying a rifle, and walked out carrying a legend. Her shots echoed through battlefields. Her voice echoed across continents. And her story echoes still.